everybody, and welcome to the official SuperCoach AFL podcast. A very special edition today with the winner of SuperCoach 2024 joining us to give us some great insights in what he is thinking about as the clock ticks down to round one in 2025. You might already notice on your podcast feed that every week from here in, you'll get an episode early in the week from the Phantom and the Phantom's Lair team over in Adelaide. They were doing some great 2025 predictions. That you'll find that on your feed right now, so check that out. And later in the week, we'll do an episode in the Herald Sun studio. But today, special edition, we're all coming together to speak to the winner from 2024, who we'll get to very shortly. But joining us from Adelaide is the Phantom. Phantom, this is the one that we really need to listen to before we seriously get into picking some players for 2025.
It is. Hello, guys. Hello, super coaches. I say it every year. Once a year, we have someone that can actually play the game, is actually good at AFL Supercoach on the show. So as always, a must listen. I've spoken to this guy before. We had him on the Lair late last year, and obviously, given the results, knows his Supercoach. So looking forward to getting his opinion, getting his thoughts, and what, it's going to be an interesting year of Supercoach in 2025.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few little things that are a bit different to last year, so it'd be great to hear what he's thinking around that. And of course, I shouldn't forget, also joining us for the first time, I think, in 2025 is Patch, fresh off a live cricket blog or live tennis blog. Is that still going? I think there's more cricket happening, isn't there? But we've managed to grab you to talk some AFL Supercoach.
It never stops, but the heart always longs for Supercoach. So I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted not to be thinking about Sri Lanka and the MCG and Australia Park and all Melbourne Park and all the tennis nonsense. I just want to get into some Supercoach and pick some brains of some very smart people.
We do have one of them at least on the show today. So we've been waffling long enough. We should get to Joven, who won the 50 grand prize in SuperCoach AFL last year with the most points. So yes, round of applause to welcome. Great to see him back in for 2025. So Joven, welcome onto the show. And how's being the grand champion of SuperCoach changed your life?
Thanks very much, Al. Well, it's been an awesome few months since the season wrapped up. I was riding a pretty amazing high for, about a month, and it was, sort of had to keep pinching myself that it was, real, that, everyone plays Supercoach, and, I always used to just play for leagues, and you always think, there's a bit of a chance, but, it's kind of crazy to think about the people that win it, and to be a part of that group has been really special.
And have you spent all the 50 grand yet?
No, luckily I have my mum and dad keeping an eye on my money, and my mum recommended me to just put it in a term deposit. So I haven't really had much access to it, which is probably a good thing for a 20-year-old. So it's just been earning some interest. I'll think more about what I want to do with it, maybe some travel, but at the moment it's just sitting nicely in the bank account.
20-year-old schooling us all in SuperCoach. Big win in SuperCoach, obviously, but any big wins on the footy field? 20-year-old still gets around on the field. I believe a big grand final last year. Did you do the double, SuperCoach glory and Premiership glory on the field?
Unfortunately, I used up all my luck in SuperCoach, so we went down in the grand finals, close game. We lost narrowly, so that was a bit disappointing, but I wasn't even too gutted because I was still riding the high from SuperCoach. But yeah, it was pretty frustrating not to do the double.
Did you at least play better, not having to come off at quarter time and check your phone, at every break to see who was scoring well?
Yeah, that helped me focus in a bit better on my own performance. That definitely set my mind straight.
And you were telling us off air that I'm not sure if it came out of your SuperCoach winnings, but you were spending some time with mates on a cruise over summer, so that would have been a nice way to just cap off that sort of SuperCoach lap of honour, I suppose.
Yeah, that was great fun. We had a good time on a cruise. 13 of us boys from a group of mates from school. So yeah, that was heaps of fun.
Awesome, and I guess we better get into some SuperCoach talk. So if you've opened the site and had a little look around so far, is there anything jumping out at you? Just some early thoughts on, maybe we know there are a few different things about SuperCoach 2025. So does that change the way you approach the game?
Well, yeah, there's one big thing jumping out to me. I've got a whole new player to pick in my team this year. So it's taking a bit of getting used to. I like it. I like the game innovating. And I think the flex is going to be awesome because in AFL fantasy, they have a similar, not on the field, but they have a utility position. And it gives you so much flexibility. Like, I think the flex is going to be awesome for not only like on-field scoring, but also your trades. Like, gives you a lot of flexibility to, like, when you're trading out players. So I might be trading out a forward, but then I've got a forward in my flex already. I can flick him into the forward line and then bring in anyone I want. So it's going to make the competition a lot more interesting. You're not as handicapped by what your team's already looking like. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun, a bit to get used to. I'm still not sure who or what position I'm going to start in the flex. So I guess I'll let the preseason take care of that, and it might shape up a bit differently. But yeah, I'm looking forward to having a go at it.
Pat, you've had a little bit of time now to think about the flex. It is an interesting one. It's interesting to hear Joven talk about what it's going to mean for our trades through the year. But if even the winner is a bit unsure about how to start flex, I think that makes us all feel a little bit better. You've had some time to think about it now. What are you thinking?
I think it's, I'm a huge fan as well. I have no idea what the winning formulas to success will be, but I think it gives us the thing I'm looking at it to start with is another way to make money, because that's, so crucial early in the season. And Joven spoke about it at the end of last year, as that was one of the keys to doing well, was finding that value. So I think there is a really good case for if it's a rookie or a slightly more expensive, 200K rookie, or if it's, a mid-price that you think he's going to make bulk cash. I think that's where I'm leaning to start with. And then from there on out, hopefully we'll have a bit more information as to if there are going to be 3 rucks, if there's a cherry we need to jump on, or if Matt Flynn's a must-have, or if if we get more scope to to discover what's going on and what the best use of it is. So I think that kind of having the short-term plan is how I'm looking at it so far. But yeah, who knows?
Before we get into a bit more detail about maybe going through some positions and who we might be looking at and some strategies, I mean, Joven, just based on your experience from last year, how important is the starting team? Obviously, we spend weeks and weeks agonising over it and making 1,000 different changes, and we all want to get the perfect team in round one, but how important was that to actually getting you to number one at the end of the year?
Well, to be honest, I think a lot of people won't want to hear this, but the starting team really isn't that important. Like, I know it seems like a lot, but you can be a long way back and win. I think it's more important that, you sort of get your structure right and have a few plans if things go wrong. Like in your starting team, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into, going down a certain route and then you just get screwed over by injuries or players not performing. But I think the starting team, it's really just a jumping off point, because the game is won and lost in your trades. And so I think, getting a few starting picks right certainly doesn't hinder your chances. But I think the first sort of 3 or 4 rounds where you're trading players, because you're not going to get every pick right, I think that's the most important part of the season.
Well, we've seen your forward line now, so you probably like hearing that from Joven there. You'll be able to fix it up as you go.
Yeah, well, that's right. I don't mind the idea of just get an early look, and I mean, probably round 0 helps with that as well. And then I think something that probably we have learnt a little bit over the last couple of years is, maybe previously we've waited 2 or 3 rounds, and you want to obviously get the right rookies before prices change and things. But especially with round 0, maybe you get some players changing price a little bit earlier than others, and at different times you can really make some early moves. And if you spot a trend or a player that you think, an Isaac Heaney or someone from last year that, okay, I didn't have him in my starting team, but make the move early, don't wait. So that's probably a key to it, I would think. But yeah, that's nice to know that you don't have to get every single pick right. And if you're agonising over, one player or another player, it's not the end of the world to make sure you get it spot on before round 1.
And one other thing I was intrigued about, Joven, in terms of we had the early buys last year that caused a lot of uncertainty about how to deal with that. How are you approaching the early buys this year? How did you approach them last year? Did you avoid everyone that missed a game early, or you weren't too fazed by it?
Yeah, last year I was pretty adamant that I wasn't really worried about the early buys, because it was best 18. It's not like you're picking a player and then you're getting a 0 when they're not playing. You're getting, your 18th or 19th best player that was normally on field. So last year I picked a lot of guys. I think I picked Flanders and Tom Green, both of the rucks, Gorn and Grundy, I started, like Alex Sexton, James Jordan. But I think this year it's slightly different in that we have those 4 teams on the 1 bye, and there's a lot of good options from those teams, which is, sort of giving me a bit of a headache. Like in defence especially, I like Roberts and Mills and Kitty Coleman if he gets up, but it's going to be a bit of a balancing act in terms of how many of these guys I can start, because, I like them and they've got the extra like cash generation potentially baked in if they play in round 0, but you don't want to be giving up too many points on field. So I don't know, it's going to be a bit more of a balancing act this year. I think I might steer clear of a few of those round 3 guys that I would have otherwise started.
Good way to think about it, though, splitting those early buys almost into 2, where you've got that round 3, which could be problematic. And as you say, there's a lot of players that we really like in Supercoach who won't be playing that week. But then you've got the round 2 and 5 or 4, whatever it is, buys, those other teams, and those players all seem very lowly owned at this stage. Like people, I think, are generally just avoiding everybody, but it means you've got a Tom Green or a Lockie Whitfield or a Sam Flanders or Will Day, these kind of guys, Zach Merritt, who people are kind of avoiding. But if you've only got 2 teams missing, it shouldn't be too hard to cover. And yeah, that might give you an edge early in the year and, save a trade rather than having to bring them in some stage later on.
Yeah, well, Al, you and I were talking about this earlier today, where it was a case of, you miss Zach Merritt scoring 110 and you replace him with a guy that's scoring, 80, maybe 90 if you're lucky. So you kind of only lose 20 to 30 points as opposed to losing 120 points you've got to make up over the rest of the season, which, yeah, certainly shifted my thinking a little bit. But yeah, Joven, as you said, those 4 buys all at once, the AFL's done us dirty. the scheduling once again has done us dirty.
Do you think about the mid-season buys at all? I mean, this year they seem a little bit easier with we've previously had 6 teams missing each week. This year it's only 4. Or is that something we worry about later on in the year?
Yeah, I never really
Joven,
factor it in. Like once it gets to about sort of, maybe a few weeks out from the buys, I'll start, I'll put a bit of a spreadsheet together and, look at, you don't want to have, missing out on players playing. You never want to get a donut during the buys. But I think in the starting team, it doesn't really matter very much.
Yeah, fair.
It's good to hear.
All right, well, sorry, Phantom.
Just on what Joven said in his answers there, we've said it before. I think this pre-season we do overthink this game, and that's sort of part of the fun. We like to overanalyze it, overthink about it, over talk about it. In a way, over the next few months, over every summer. But the winner, last year's winner, spoke about what he's not worrying about. He goes in, happy to admit that he's going to be wrong in some areas. He's not going to get everything right. So just a good, lesson and reminder that, maybe we do think too much about it. So strip it back a little bit and, look at the numbers and pick the players you want to have. And, the buys and the flex position as well now adds to that security, I guess, when we're thinking of the early season buys. We've got another player, another layer of protection there. So stripping it back might be the way to go.
Yeah, and the fact that, especially when you're talking about something like flex, everybody's, it's brand new for all of us. So, we're all just going to sort of experiment a bit and see what works. But if we want to dive in a little bit deeper on some strategy and some players and maybe just go from the back line is the traditional way to do it. But you mentioned their defenders. Obviously, there's 2 or 3 really standout kind of value options, but unfortunately they do all have that round 3 bye. But how are you looking at the defence overall? It seems like, what a lot of people are picking, there's 2 or 3 very popular sort of high-end primos and then a bit of a drop-off after that. But how do you think about the defence in 2025?
Yeah, I sort of feel like it's a bit difficult to pick this year. I feel like defence in the past has been, a bit easier to pick maybe. I don't know if I'm just looking with rose-tinted glasses, but there's a lot of mid-prices that are, I think a value, but I'm not really sure, I'm not that sure about their roles, or I'm not sure they've got the buy or something like that. I think the top sort of the premiums are all going to be good again, but I don't think they have a lot of value. Even like a Jack Sinclair, I know is pretty popular, but I don't really know if he's going to put, he's not getting a new role or anything. And I love him. I had him in my team last year, but it's not like he really anything changed for him. I think he's going to be about the same. And then the rookies, I think, are going to be pretty solid, like Travalia. Looks like he's going to get a game early on. And I haven't really heard much out of the Eagles about Bo Allen, but I'm sort of thinking maybe only like one rookie on field in defence at the moment. I know usually like we end up with a few more, but doesn't look like there's a heap coming through. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Interesting there, one rookie on the field. It might all come down to what happens with some mature ages that we're hoping make their mark over the preseason start. El Hawley at the Bombers doing some good things on the track, collecting plenty of ball during the match sim sessions, but there's a few runners putting their hands up there alongside him for 2025. So he's a watch. Riley Bias as well at the Swans, mature age, drafted from the VFL. Haven't heard a lot about him. So they've also got a lot of guys going through that back half. Joven mentioned it before, Matty Roberts and Ben Paton also up there as well at the Swans. So ideally, if we can we know these SuperCoach mature ages are a goal when starting our team. So we're hoping these guys can come through and maybe push their case for round one, and hopefully they become on-field options, because we know they're sort of ready-made players, ready-made in the AFL. They've been through the state league systems, not drafted, sort of wait around as much. So we're hoping these guys can push their way through, and that might change the rookie conversation in defence. But Joven, you said before you like Mills and Matty Roberts. I like Matty Roberts too, 111 his final 6 games of last season. Can you pick them both though? Don't have Roberts in my team at the moment because I couldn't overlook his Mills for cheaper. Can you start them both?
I think you can, but I think it comes down to whether or not Kitty Coleman's right to go. I wouldn't want to have all 3 of them on the same bye in the same line. Like that's a recipe for disaster. So if Kitty Coleman doesn't get up, I'm pretty keen on. I've got both of them like sort of in and out of my team at the moment. Roberts, I think like I was really keen on him the way he finished last year. I don't know. Some people say it coincided with Justin McInerney going out, so maybe a little bit of a watch in the preseason. But I think he's a really good player, and they like his distribution out of defence. So yeah, I'm pretty keen on both of them.
Yeah, Phantom mentioned Ben Paton. There's another little, again, another Sydney player, but another halfback. They do have a lot of them, but I think he's been getting a bit of time in the match sims. I think a bit of a forgotten player after he was cut by the Saints last year. Not the sort of guy I would expect to put up massive scores, but he could get a role and get some early games, and he's pretty cheap. So another name to keep an eye on. But if we move into the midfield, Joven, are you just sort of more generally speaking, are you more of a guns and rookies man, or you're a bit of mid-price madness? Because there's plenty of good names in the midfield that you could go with if you want to head down that road.
Yeah, I'm always more of a mid-price and underpriced premiums, trying to target those guys that are, maybe in the 90 to 100 range that are going to go 110, and then the guys that are 80 that are going to push 100. And this year it's, I wish I had 10 midfield slots on field. Like there's a lot of guys, a lot of risk, but a lot of guys that are looking awesome in terms of, the value they present. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about what we can get out of the midfield this year.
Give us some names.
We need them.
Yeah, well, I reckon like the underpriced premium guys, I like Andy Brayshaw. Just like I think he's probably 3rd in line to get a tag, which, I don't always try and factor that in, but it is an added bonus. And I like the way he finished last year. Like a Jordan Dawson as well. I feel like just a lot of things went wrong for Dawson last year. Tom Green and Errol Goulden, if they didn't have the bye, I'd be so keen on starting them. And then I sort of think of it as like the 400s club, like the midfielders priced in the 400K is just crazy this year. So like Adam Chera, if his body holds up, we've seen him do it before. Clayton Oliver, everyone's going to have him. He's just a lock. And then like a Will Ashcroft, I know his buy is not ideal, but I was actually pretty annoyed in the grand final last year that he played so well, because I was thinking, how good's this? Like, he's going to be awesome next year. Not that many people are talking about him. And then he goes and drops, I don't know what he had in the grand final, but it was massive. And now a lot of people are on. So yeah, he'll be pretty popular. Even like a Darcy Parish and Will Day. There's so many options in there. Even like a Finn Callahan, I don't mind the look of. So, we're just going to take a look, and it's going to be hard determining because you can't start them all. I'm probably only thinking like 2 or 3 is the most you can have. So yeah, it's going to be have our ears to the ground in preseason, and trust the eye test, see how these guys are looking in the preseason games and in round 0 before I make a decision.
So Clayton Oliver M1 is what I'm hearing, and then work your way down from there.
8 mid prices.
Yeah, I mean, may as well if you're going to send it. I do love that he brought up Jordan Dawson. He's someone I've been looking at and going, am I crazy for looking at him after last year? And, sitting next to Tim Mitchell, if I mention him, Tim will fly into a rage and yell at me. So it is nice to hear that somebody else is looking at him.
Yeah, I had him last year, and he was awesome for a bit, and then he wasn't so awesome. But I think he had some problems with his body, and, they were throwing him around a bit. The way I see it, though, he's their best player, along with maybe Isaac Rankin, but he's so classy, and he tackles, and they just look better, I reckon, when he's in the midfield racking up and doing a lot for them. So I think he can, get back up to where he was the year before and push that sort of 115 average, which would be a pretty good return for him.
You're over on the ground in South Australia, Phantom. Any signs of how Dawson's where he's lining up this year?
I definitely agree with Joven there. Crows do look a better side with him around the ball, especially what he can do forward of centre. But he also made a point there. He is their Mr. Fix-It as well. Matthew Nicks likes to pull him out and station him across the ground where he's needed because he is so versatile and he can do that. So I can't see that not happening again in 2025. So he might get pulled out, especially they've got a few more guys to go through there now. James Peatling is at the club. If they give Sid Draper a go, the draftee, there's a few more names to go through the middle of the ground now. So will Matthew Nicks use Jordan Dawson a little bit more fluctuating again, maybe? I still think he's priced below what he can do. I still think it didn't really go right for him, right for the Crows last year. So I think he'll improve on his average, but I'm still just a little bit worried about how he might be moved around just because he's so influential elsewhere.
And Joven, you mentioned all those, the 400s club, all those good names. From a sort of strategy perspective, what do you want out of the, obviously if they average on 110 and, you can keep them, that's amazing. But what do you sort of need for someone like a Will Day or a Darcy Parish to be a successful pick this year?
Yeah, I think I always look at it in terms of like what they're priced at. So Will Day sort of priced at like 90, same with Parish. Some of those other guys like Oliver and he's priced like in the low 80s, I think. So you got that extra security blanket. You don't need him to do as much. But sort of those guys priced in the 90s, you'd like them to have maybe like 15 points of upside, I reckon. So sort of pushing that 105 to, and then it's an added bonus if they go beyond that, which I think those guys can do. But there's question marks over, apparently they're trying out Will Day in the forward line and stuff. And, that Essendon midfield is busy with a lot of guys going through there. Yeah, well, my dad's an Essendon supporter, so I wasn't going to say bad, but...
Look, I'm an Essendon supporter. I'm going to say bad. We're
just
going to be bad, guys. Oh.
Yeah, so, I mean, are you're hoping them to be keepers, primos for the whole year, or is it okay if they just make you maybe $100,000 and then you can trade them, upgrade them to someone who's maybe dropped in price?
Yeah, I'm not looking for them to be keepers at that price. I don't think you need them to be keepers at that price. If they last all the way up until the mid-season buys, and then you can start luxury trading them if they've done well enough. It's not the cash is nice, but it's also getting the points on field early on, which is, you get that bonus of the points and the cash generation. That's why mid prices are, you got to get the right ones to win it. And then, if they blow up, they can really hurt you. So I think it's a combination of the both.
All right. And quickly touching on the rookies in the midfield, are you keen on all of these sort of 175 to 200K guys? There's plenty of good ones that the fandom keeps telling us about.
Yeah, well, I'm keen on them at the moment, but it's always hard to know until the season, how these guys are going to adjust to playing against the big bodies. It seems to be it was a good rookie crop in terms of midfielders. A lot of them had really good junior numbers. They seem to be tearing up the track, but I mean, everyone is at this time of year, so I guess we'll just wait and see.
Patch, speaking of those guys, you're speaking about guys running through the midfield at Essendon. Another we haven't talked about as much on the show in the bracket, Elijah Sardis, third-year bomber now. Been impressing on the track. We know he was a junior big ball magnet, big Supercoach numbers when he landed at Essendon. Kicking has improved, or looks to have improved anyway, at least against his teammate. They're telling us from the ground there at Essendon. Is he going to get a game, and can we pick him?
I don't know, and I don't know. It's so hard to tell what is going to happen at the Bombers this year. They've got the North Melbourne problem of having too many midfielders and still being just awful at getting the ball forward of midfield. So I think outside of Zach Merritt, I can't really pick what's going on in there. There's been talk about Nick Martin running through the middle and being a centre bounce operator. You've got, Durham, staking more claim there. You've got, Sardis, but also Hobbs is there. They've got other young guns they want to try and push through the midfield, and they're just simply not all going to fit alongside Parrish. Setterfield is still on the list and still playing well. They've got Dylan Shield, apparently off half back, but I still think is from a football perspective, a guy with a lot of pace that can stream out of the centre square. So I had the same approach for me as I had last year, where if it's not Merritt, I'm not touching it with a 10-foot pole until we see some evidence around it. If he comes out and brains it in the practice matches and there's obviously a role, then I'd look at it. But he kind of scares me a bit. And, we had this conversation last year where he'd improved his kicking at training, and then, in the games, he was made sub for a few games, confidence looked shot, the kicking fell away with it. So I don't know. He's pretty much a no for me at this point, but willing to be convinced because I would like him to be good.
Moving into the ruck, Joven, looks like the popular move is to Tristan Cherry to maybe take the number one crown potentially from Max Gawn. And then you've got sort of 3 or 4 names at the top, and then maybe a bit of a gap after that. Can we find some value there, unless you go all the way down to some really cheap guys who might get a game this year?
Yeah, well, I like Tom De Koning. I know he's been talked up a lot this preseason, but I think he's just going to be awesome. Carlton are a lot better when he plays ruck. I've seen that stat, sort of circling around, and I think he's just primed to have a breakout year. So I really like him. I like Sean Darcy, but I'm also really scared of Sean Darcy. I think maybe one thing that could tip it in his favour is that we've got those early best 18 rounds. And so, if he gets injured in a game and scores a stinker, it doesn't hurt your points too much. I think they really prefer him to Jackson in the ruck. So I think if he plays and his body's okay, I'd be pretty keen on him. But it's hard to trust him. And then I think a Matt Flynn. I've currently got Matt Flynn at R2 actually. I think if he can get a solo, I don't know what they like Bailey Williams, so I'm not sure if they're just going to discard him or what. But Matt Flynn is I've liked what I've seen out of Matt Flynn when he was at the Giants. So I don't know. He's just one to watch, I guess, at this stage. But pretty keen on him.
Do you feel
There's a bit of value?
Do you feel confident about that pick? Do you feel confident about that Matt Flynn pick, or it's no? Okay.
No.
I've got the tick of approval, the old wink from old Dossie, our producer. We know he's a big TDK man. We kicked him off the show this one now. But we spoke about Matt Flynn. It's all about the role, Joven said there. Number one ruckman at any club is going to score okay, and going to score okay at that price. He doesn't need to average 100 or even close to it. Anything, if he gets to above 80 at the price and pushes 90, which he doesn't need to have a lot of the footy to do that. As a big body ruckman, we've seen him score okay when he was in front of Kieran Briggs at the Giants. So if he's playing round one, I think I'm definitely going to pick him an R2, and it's going to not an obvious pick, but number one ruckman, bigger body, he's not a kid, he's ready to go. Yes, his body could let him down, which it has already his whole first year at the Eagles, but at the price, if he's there, I agree with Joven.
And into the forward line. Now, I did listen to the Phantoms earlier this week, and I think nearly everyone on the panel picked Jason Horne-Francis as just about the number one scorer in Supercoach for the whole season. Was that right, Phantom?
Yes, we did. It's a gift. Yeah, I know we all debate Dessay versus Vic, and you call us biased, we call you biased, but even Patch knows Jason Horne-Francis, the horny one, is a gift as a forward. I think even 5 names prediction show. Go back, listen to that now, and have a watch. First time I see the Hipster on Code Sports YouTube channel if you are listening now. But 5 names actually predicted that he outdoes Zach Butters. That was his hot take for 2025. So maybe one day, I'm not sure this year, but I think once he gets it all together, he's shown his scoring power. He can just even improve or round out that consistency a little bit more. Clear number 1 forward. I think you have to pick him out.
Is that right, Joven? Is that a no-brainer and I'm an idiot for leaving him out?
Yeah, I don't know about no-brainer, but I think he's going to be even if he's not the number 1 forward, he's going to be top 6 anyway. So I think he's you doing not too bad to pick him. I've got him in my side at the moment.
He's being nice. He wants to come back on the show. He's saying no-brainer.
No, fair.
You're allowed to call Al an idiot. It's allowed.
And what about after him? Is it there's a few pretty obvious picks who I am going to pick in Jack McRae, Caleb Daniel, Bailey Smith. Any reason to avoid any of those guys?
Nah, those 3 pick themselves, really. I don't see, there's maybe slight concerns, but their value is just way too good this year.
I keep looking for reasons not to pick Bailey Smith. I don't know why. It just doesn't. It feels a bit weird. I don't know. The tail is tingling, and I don't know why. But he does, he's ticking all the boxes. But I don't know. I've spoken to a few other people that feel the same way. With we're just not sure, and maybe it's the Geelong factor. Maybe we're not sure about how much run he's getting on Reece Stanley's farm. If he's been given enough time to frolic around. I don't know. It's just a bit. I don't know. It just feels a bit weird. Am I insane for thinking it feels weird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him for so long too. Out of mind.
Yeah, I'm a Geelong fan as well, so I'm super keen to see what Baslenka produces this year. I reckon he's going to be awesome. We need a gun inside midfielder, so give him the keys, I reckon, and let him go to work.
Joven, in that price bracket was Mateus Filippo. Obviously news during the week, a few days before we recorded this show. We'll miss the start of the up to 3 months as well. Big blow for the Saints. Big blow for SuperCoach value hunters. Was he in your plans?
Yeah, he was one of my first picks. He was, along with those 3 guys, I thought pretty much a lock. But I've actually pivoted to Riley Sanders now, which is not as much of a lock. He's he's got the Bevo factor hanging over him, but I really like him. I think he can score, and he looks good. Like he's having a big preseason apparently. So I'm pretty excited about him. But yeah, the Bevo factor scares me a little bit, but I'm pretty bullish on Sanders this year.
Only a little bit. Scares me a lot.
SuperCoach freak though. We've spoken about him obviously coming through the system. Good. Absolutely massive as a junior. Even when he was given the license to go and chase the ball at the Dogs already, he's showing what he can do. So yeah, it's all the Bevo factor. All depends on what role he's given. And I think as Pat sent there about being scared, it could look good for 2 weeks and then it could change suddenly and then go back. So I don't mind it, but yeah, take a brave person. But again, I guess you don't win SuperCoach by sitting back.
And the other name I'm obviously watching very closely this year, I got totally sucked in by some vision that came out on Richmond's Instagram channel the other day of Tom Lynch kicking some goals and taking some big marks in just some intra-club hit-out kind of stuff. But that was enough for me. But what do you think, Joven? Is he worth the risk this year?
Yeah, I think he's around the mark. I don't like picking key forwards ever in SuperCoach. I mean, he's very cheap. He's old as well, and he's injury prone. But I've had him in and out of my team, so I'm just gonna, there's a lot to play out. I'll see how he looks, in the preseason. If he gets a couple of games under his belt and looks at it moving okay, I'm keen on him, but still a bit unsure at this stage.
What do we need out of him? 5, 6 games in a row? That'll be it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'd looked at Richmond's early fixture, hoping maybe we could get a bag. But it's a pretty rough run early on. I think we've got Port and Geelong away, and some of the Sydney away. Maybe it's going to be hard for him to if you could get 2 or 3 really good scores out of him early, and he gets a bit of a spike, just that's enough. But yeah, we might have to wait a little bit for that, unfortunately.
It wouldn't be Supercoach preseason with that old Al Payton spruiking Tom Lynch as a cheap option. It's for the last 3 years.
He just keeps getting cheaper.
I wonder why. Don't know how that happens.
All right, well, we better start wrapping things up. But Joven, you did touch on the fact already that trades is really where you can build your season, and you don't have to get it all right with these starting picks. But one thing, looking back on your season last year, that I think turned out to be very pivotal in the end was saving a couple of trades for later in the year. Is that how you're going to go in again this year? Would that be your advice to people to try and avoid spending them all too early, and maybe even how do you use the boosts? Is that something you could try and hang on to as well?
Yeah, well, I think, to be honest, I think you should trade aggressively early on. Early on in the season is when the price rises are the steepest, and you getting the most value for players when they're just starting out in the season. So I used 2 boosts to start last season. I think you got to try and get after it early, get those picks that are, because they'll get away from you, the players that are severely undervalued and then just scoring a lot. Then you can't catch up to them. But then you need to settle down, and I always like to leave myself with a few trades. I don't really care about the boost so much. I'll use up the boost by the buys, but yeah, hold a few trades for the end of the season.
Any questions, Phantom, to finish off with before we let Joven go?
I think we've covered it there. We've got pretty deep into different positions and what we're going to do. But any other overarching strategy, or Supercoaches, someone may be looking to play Supercoach for the first time, they're going to pick their team. What's one piece of advice you'd give them?
I would just say mainly just prioritize value, and I would say that when you're trading, you don't get the points that someone scored when they're not in your team. So just keep that in mind. Keep chasing value. It always looks good to bring in a guy that's averaging 120, but you got to think about what's going to happen in the rest of the season. So that's my piece of advice.
Yeah, well said.
The Matt Rowell rule. Patch, I know you had one question you were really keen to ask Joven when I told you he was coming on today.
I've now forgotten what that question is.
I think it was around the fact that Joven said that he comes up with a new team name every year.
Of course, yes. Joven, you had the good Caleb Windsor not name last year. What are you rolling with this year? Have you decided? How much pressure have you put on yourself to pick a good name this year?
Well, yeah, it's been a big decision this year to come up with a new team name. But I've actually got a mate that got drafted up to the Gold Coast this year, Cooper Bell. So I've got to do a Cooper Bell pun at the moment. I'm thinking Cooper Bell Pepper, Cooper Bellyache. I wanted Cooper Bells and Whistles, but it didn't fit in the team name restrictions. So yeah, something around that. But shout out to my mate Cooper Bell up at the Gold Coast. Defender forward status, so I'll be picking him. Hopefully he gets a game, but if not, he's a handy loophole. I'm not sure. Nice. I think he's been going well in pre-season, so yeah, fingers crossed for him.
There you go. There's a name for us to keep an eye on that we haven't heard so far. But thank you, Joven. It's been awesome to get those early thoughts. We'll touch base with you, I think, again before the season starts, if that's all right, to see where you're placed and what you're thinking coming into round one. But Phantom, Patch, thanks for your time on this preseason episode. And I think from next week we'll be getting stuck into some position shows. Not sure, Phantom, which is first cab off the rank. I think we've got Rucks then in Melbourne later in the week.
Are you doing forwards?
Oh, we might be. Not sure. All right.
Can we not?
Yeah.
Yes, no, all coming up, of course, on, as we can get this podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get or listen to your shows, and the Code Sports YouTube channel. You can see Phantom holding up a picture of Jason Horne-Francis just debate out there, but plenty of analysis coming your way, positions breakdown. We'll split them up, the Lair and the crew over there. So plenty of content to come before the practice matches kick off, and as well, then we'll be straight into it and we'll have you covered there. So a big month and a half, and we're not far away from the real stuff.
Yeah, no, it's getting quite close. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon.